Firstly, just a quick introduction. Eduardo, thank you for setting me up. Like he said, I've been in the industry for about 25 years. Started off my career with one of the sort of original consulting companies called Foundstone back in early 2000s. I was at the forefront of incident response and forensics, both with Foundstone as well as a company called Mandiant. At Mandiant, I helped build the first EDR in the market. We used it mainly to drive investigations and incident response. Mandiant is best known as the company that introduced the APT1 to the globe. We exposed basically the presence of nation state threat actors in terms of how it is that they operate, their agenda, their tools and techniques that they use to hack into companies. And so we're well known. We were well known, from that standpoint. I started Silerian, about 8 years ago now. And like Eduardo said, we are the platform of choice for enterprises. The idea is present a platform that gives you full end-to-end visibility and then leverage the capabilities and the telemetry you have to understand what the bad guys are doing. So with that, the agenda that I was going to use for sort of this presentation is threefold. I'll talk about a little bit about the history of AI and ML in cyber. I'll talk about how Silerian uses AI and ML in sort of our own stack and how it is that we protect our customers. And spend a little bit of time on future trends, right? Again, the focus is going to be mainly on cybersecurity. I don't know if there's going to be an opportunity for questions. Eduardo, do you know?
Yes, we will have opportunity for question. If somebody type a question in the chat, I might interrupt you.
Okay, yeah, please do. Yeah, I'm not going to be paying attention to the chat, so if there are questions, do let me know. All right, so just in terms of history, obviously AI and ML have been around for a long time. I actually, back in '97, I did my research in some machine learning models back in the day, right? Before, right? Obviously, AI is all the rage now, but the industry as a concept has been around for a long time. Just coming back to cybersecurity, the first really, I think the industry has been around since the '90s. Prior to that, there were, I think the Morris worm came into existence back in the '80s, mid '80s. So when that was first introduced, there were concepts like network-based intrusion detection systems that mostly relied on signatures to understand what was going on within the network. From there, I'd say network-based IDS systems were sort of the first parlay into detection and response. After that, we got more host-based technologies like your antivirus scanners. A lot of the times they relied on signatures, and some companies did introduce the concept of machine learning when it came to that. But I'll spend a little time on that. But in the '90s, most of the detection were based on baselining. Right, statistical models that, while we might not call them ML per se, they still relied on some models, right? I'd say they would be the precursors to ML in our space. In 2000s is when I would say machine learning sort of started to go mainstream, especially when it came to phishing detection and malware detection on the endpoints, right? When it comes to phishing detection, we got some different ML models, Bayesian models, as well as SVMs that allowed companies to create spam filters. And there were some companies that introduced some ML models to deploying signatures onto the endpoint. But I would say really it is only in the 2010s is when AI and ML really took off. While I was at Mandiant, we had access to a lot of malware based on the investigations we had done. And so we actually created some ML models. We introduced a free source product called Red Forest that leveraged some deep learning in order to create an ML model based on all of the malware we had, right? After that, there was a company called Silence that came around. Their entire concept was, rather than relying on signatures that you introduce to the endpoint, let's instead use ML models and try to detect malicious activity on the endpoints, right? Now, a lot of the times, a lot of the focus was detecting malware, not so much behavior, and not so much malicious activity, right? But that's when sort of the industry really took off. We had Silence, we had a lot of companies kind of bring ML to the market, both from a detection as well as response standpoint. Um, and I'll kind of talk a little bit about sort of our own history, our company's history with ML as well as AI. But 2024 is really when Gen AI kind of opened up our space a little bit. So we had just to kind of set the stage a little bit. The way the Silerian platform works, and this is true of any security solution, in order for you to understand what is going on, in order for a company to be protected, you need to make sure you have that end-to-end visibility, right? You need to understand who the bad guys are, how are they operating, what are their potential attack vectors for them to get access into the network, and then once they do get access, what do, right? How do they kind of continue within their attack lifecycle? What are the tools and techniques that they use? And the more visibility you have into how the bad guys operate, the better your ability to detect and respond, right? And better your ability to detect and respond at each stage of the attack lifecycle, right? So your typical attack lifecycle, there's multiple phases that the attackers go through, especially when you're dealing with sort of sophisticated threat actors, whether it is nation state actors or organized financial based Russian or criminal actor groups. What you will see is they will go through 6 or 7 kind of stages in order to accomplish their mission, right? Stage one is they will do some reconnaissance of the company that they want to attack, which means they might do some internet research. They might understand who the users are in order to potentially phish the users. They might run some initial scans in order to understand what your internet presence is. At which point, if they do find a foothold, whether it is through a social engineering attack or some service that's exposed on the internet, once they get that foothold, they'll establish some persistence, whether that persistence is through malware that they introduce on an endpoint or perhaps access to VPN. Once they get that initial foothold is when they try to escalate their privileges, right? And by escalation of privileges, what I mean is they will try to get access as that of an administrator, right? Whether it's a domain admin or something else, they're essentially trying to get access to the critical infrastructure and the data. And then at which point, once they've escalated their privileges, they try to understand where your critical data is. They'll scan for the data. And then once they get access to that data, they'll steal the data. And if it's a ransomware operator, what they might also do is set the stage for actual encryption of the files and basically leverage that encryption and the fact that they have the key to that those encrypted files in order to conduct their ransom, right? And so that's your typical attack scenario. For a company to stay on top of it and understand what is going on, what you have to do is have that visibility across everything. What is happening across my users? What is happening on my endpoints, my network, my cloud services? And the better your visibility, the better your ability to detect and respond. And that's what our platform does, right? It is giving you that full end-to-end visibility and introducing detection and response rules, both in terms of just rules as well as AI and ML in order to stay, keep your company protected. And so, with the introduction of LLMs, what we've done is, over time, we've kind of leveraged ML, and as and when the industry, continues to improve, we're trying to see how it is that we can adopt AI and ML into our own stack. So back in 2018, we, because of all of the telemetry we had, we created some ML models that allowed us to understand anomalies, right? Whether it is time-based anomalies or just anomalies in terms of how users operate. We were able to create some ML models and deploy them into our stack. And they were somewhat effective, right? But really, from my standpoint and from our standpoint, given the visibility we had, it seemed like the ML models didn't really kind of move the needle as much, right? Because we already had that visibility. We knew exactly who was doing what. I would say ML is a little more effective when you don't have that end-to-end visibility, right? If all you're relying on is logs from, say, your firewall, the use of ML becomes all the more critical, because at that point you don't have that end-to-end visibility, and so you need to leverage these ML models to surface potential issues. And so from our history standpoint, right, we used ML, we leveraged ML on both on the endpoints as well as in our log management solution in order to surface those time-based anomalies. But it's only in the last year or so, I think, where our use of AI and ML has really took off, just given the introduction of Gen AI, right? What you will see sort of in the industry, when it comes to LLMs, is a lot of the times companies do use LLMs for assisting in incident summaries, in rule generation. A lot of the companies do use co-pilots or assistants in order to help your SOC team to understand what is going on in the platform. So think of it as a way for upskilling your current analysts, as well as providing some L1 or L2 level analysis to your SOC team, right? And for those of you that in the audience that are not conversant with sort of security terms, SOC is your security operations center. It is a team that you will leverage in order to, on behalf of your company, figure out if there's something malicious going on and detect and respond to threats. Right? And so LLMs have become pretty good at providing that sort of third party, that analyst level support. On the adversarial side, and this was something that we're seeing more of. Just yesterday, in fact, or this last week, Anthropic talked about how a Chinese state actor was able to leverage them in order to conduct some espionage and some kind of phishing. And so we're going to see more of that, right? Whether it is through just creating better simulations, creating deepfakes, or for the more sophisticated actor, leveraging their own LLMs and their own kind of models in order to actually exploit services. We're going to see a lot more of the use of Gen AI from an adversarial standpoint, where the bad actors are now using Gen AI and LLMs to make it seem like they are someone you trust, and then once you do that, once they establish that trust, they are able to kind of continue within their attack life cycle, right? So from a from our standpoint, AI is both a sword as well as a shield, right? A sword obviously just kind of makes the bad guys a lot more capable and makes it more easier for them to conduct so more targeted phishing at scale, and that is something that we'd want to be on the lookout for. All right, so let's talk about how we're using AI internally. I'll talk about sort of three different aspects to our use of AI and ML within our platform. One is an AI assistant that is essentially meant to upskill your SOC analyst and make sense of the platform. Two is we'll talk about how we're using AI from a detection standpoint, and then summarization of incidents and tickets. And lastly, we'll talk about how we're able to use AI to create automations as well as remediation workflows, right? Once you've detected something, how do you quickly act on it, and how do you make sure you're responding to a threat actor as quickly as possible? All right. So for us, because we kind of we own the entire stack. We the way our platform works is there's an agent that runs on the endpoints that send telemetry to our backend. We're able to take that telemetry, make sense of it, and understand what is happening on the endpoints, on your servers, within your network. And so the way we're able to leverage AI assistant is in a number of interesting ways. The most important thing is we have trained our AI assistant to understand what data we have, right? Because that is the most important thing, right? The better your data, the better your model, and the better your ability to query the platform and understand what is going on. So we have embedded the AI assistant as a chat interface, as well as a command line interface that allows your analyst to ask questions of it. We, at the end of the day, we are backed by a log management platform, and so for you to make sense of what is happening in your network. You need to understand what the taxonomy is. You need to understand what data you've ingested and how to ask questions of it, right? And so what we're leveraging the AI assistant for is making it easy for you to just using natural language. And we'll get to a point where you can even just use your voice to ask questions about the platform. Questions like, oh, find me, summarize all of the alerts for the last day, right? Or who is logged in from VPN from an unusual country, or show me services running on my endpoints or processes running on my endpoints that stand out, right? That are unusual. Like all of those are just natural language queries that you can now take and ask of the platform and have the AI system respond back. So in order for it to kind of be able to do that, it has full awareness of all of our platform. It knows fully what alerts we have, what do the endpoints look like, what is the data that's contained within the endpoints, how to query the endpoints, how to ask questions of the endpoints, and then how to search and summarize it, as well as take actions as part of the analyst. And just to add to this, right? So natural language is something that makes it easy for the security analyst to ask questions, and so it is an important part of an AI system, right? What you don't want happening is the analyst to be stymied by the platform itself and the technical capabilities required to ask questions and understand what is going on. And in sort of our world, Gen AI has been great at that, right? Is to summarize information. Quickly understand what is going on and present that information to the analyst, and even an analyst that might not be a trained analyst, right? That might not have years of experience with security. A model like this is providing them the ability to upskill themselves very fast, right? And so that's some important thing to keep in mind. The way our assistant works is we are using an MCP model, in that we have, it's an agentic AI approach to understanding what is going on. When you ask a question, it gets translated, and maybe I'll have another slide. Yeah, I can talk about sort of the AI approach itself, but let's actually move down there. Yeah. So once you've asked a question, for example, which endpoints are out of compliance, what the MCP model and what our model does is it identifies the related services. It figures out which of the agents are responsible for making sense of that query, and then generates a plan and executes that as a query using different agents, right? And then it's able to take all of that information and actually create a query for you, and helps you make sense of that query, right? Helps you make sense of that answer. So for us, obviously, AI assistant is key. It is the intent is to make sense, to make it easy for the SOC analyst to understand what is going on. But I like to kind of take that a little further. Once you have sort of this ability to understand exactly what is happening, and you have an agent in place, we're able to take this assistant model and actually make it available to the end user themselves, right? So if you're a user of a platform, say you're help desk user, or you're an accounting person within the company, when you have access to an agent on your machine itself, you all the more provides you the ability to understand what is going on yourself, right? And you're able to take uh, that action and apply it to your own machine. Is there some background? Yeah. Now, with that, let me pause a little bit. What I want to do is, rather than just covering slides, I'll show you some demos. I'll show you how it is that we're able to leverage LLMs in our own platform, just to kind of give you more concrete examples of yeah, how it is that we're doing it, right? So, few things. One is, what I'll do is I'll show you an example um, incident, right, where someone would have gotten phished and executed something because of that malicious email. And we'll talk about how the platform and how we're able to use Gen AI and LLMs to kind of firstly respond to the alert, and then come up with some remediation workflows based on that, right? So what I'm showing you here is essentially, what the platform looks like. But what I'm pulling together, so imagine a scenario where a user got an email, they opened some attachment, executed something malicious on their endpoints, and then they got infected, right? So given that scenario, let's just keep that in mind, and then we'll talk about all of the different ways we're able to leverage LLM, right? Firstly, when that does happen, because of the telemetry we have, we're able to alert as to um, what happened. So in this case, our EDR agent, the agent that's kind of pulling in telemetry from that particular user's machine, is able to alert us as to what happened. And so what we're able to do is take that one alert and essentially in real time, create an alert graph. An alert graph is essentially our take at from that one alert, telling you exactly what led to the alert happening in the first place and what happened after the alert, right? So for you to be able to leverage ML as well as AI effectively, you want to make sure you have that visibility across the board, right? You want to make sure you have you know exactly what email led to the alert in the first place, and we're able to show you that as a preview of the email. You want to know, once the user clicked on that email, what happened on the endpoint, what happened within the network, what happened across your services. Did the bad guys actually leverage the access to do something else? So all of that visibility, the more or the better your visibility, the better you're able to leverage the LLM models and ML to automatically take some actions, right? Whatever that action is. So keep this in mind. First thing is, once this alert has happened, what we're able to do is we're able to, within the platform itself, provide you a remediation script. We're essentially able to, leveraging an LLM, in this case OpenAI, able to tell you exactly what that alert is, what are recommendations that you would want, and all the more provide you an actual script that will allow you to remediate that infection on the endpoint, which you can then execute right from here, right? So that is powerful, because what it is now doing is, rather than an analyst understanding or having to have prior knowledge of what this means, the LLM itself is kind of automating that for you and providing you everything you need to help remediate, right, that particular infection. Right? So that is sort of a powerful feature to have. Right? Now, beyond that, when you have this level of coverage as to what exactly led to the alert in the first place, you can take that remediation further and apply it sort of in a more broad manner. Right? You're not just responding to a particular infection, and I'll show you how we're able to leverage this. So one is, because we have all of that the timeline information. How did the infection happen? What happened? We're able to provide you very detailed recommendations as to what it is that you should do. But more than that, what we're able to do with LLMs is create a remediation workflow for you on the fly, right? And in this case, what we're showing you is um, what we're showing you is what the LLM is able to do is figure out that there was an email that was associated with this particular timeline. It is able to extract out the URL from the email. It is able to take a screenshot of that URL, and it is able to, based on certain conditions, create a workflow for you that actually allow you to do a complete remediation, right? So typically, when the bad guys get access, what you want to understand is, what is the full scope of the intrusion, right? How did they initially get that initial foothold? What did they do once they got that foothold? Did they escalate their privileges? Did they create new accounts? And from a remediation standpoint, you want to make sure you are operating across every stage of the attack lifecycle, right? You have the means to detect and respond across each stage. And that's what this remediation workflow is getting you, right? So this ability for a platform to leverage LLMs is only going to improve, right? Right now, we're not executing this particular workflow because it might still hallucinate. But what I see within 6 months to a year that most platforms will be comfortable just allowing basically the LLM to execute the workflow themselves. Right now, you still want to put some guardrails around your LLMs. In our case, we only allow the LLM to execute certain functions, to execute certain remediation workflows, and so we're guardrailing what it can do, and we're able to do that using agentic AI. Right, but the important thing to keep in mind is that this ability is only going to improve over time, right? We got from just having plain PowerShell scripts to this automated remediation workflows in 6 months, right? So imagine 6 months or a year later, how much better this kind of model is going to get, right? So that's sort of the power of LLMs. I'm a full believer in how in that model, and given the visibility we have across sort of every stage of the attack lifecycle, we're able to apply that to within our platform. Another example I'd like to show you is basically its ability to reason. And let me show you an example. So what I have here is an example, and this is from a real world situation where we detected bad guys. There's some malware that executed some obfuscated script on an endpoint. For an analyst to be able to understand what that obfuscation means, it required years of experience. Right, you had to understand fully how to decode the obfuscation, how to apply it. You needed several years of reverse engineering experience. What we're now able to do with LLMs is take this and automate the reverse engineering of that obfuscation. All right, so that makes it so much more powerful. As an example, this here is this is a script that runs. It's a PowerShell script where it includes some obfuscation. So for you to be able to deobfuscate it, you have to pull up your workstation. You have to take this code, maybe use some code, develop your own code to understand what is going on, test it out. If there are indicators from here, you'll want to extract it out, feed it to a third-party system, and then have that third-party system apply those IOCs to further detection, right? But an LLM is able to take this and in milliseconds take that particular alert. Using OpenAI in this case, it is able to extract out that URL. And because of our ability to automate an action, we're able to take that URL and tell the firewall, what, this is the exact URL that was obfuscated within this code. Now, put a block on your firewall, and if you see any connections going out to that URL, block it. So that is the power. Right? For a platform to have this capability before, you needed a full log management in order to kind of extract out this data. You needed a reverse engineer that could take this obfuscated code, spend some hours on it to understand what may have happened, and then basically apply that. It would take a couple of days before you had this information, right? Now you have this in seconds, and that's sort of the power of LLMs now, right? And this ability to kind of deobfuscate, while now is kind of limited to certain kinds of obfuscation, I can see a time, perhaps in a year or so, where complicated executables, it's able to, like, even if there is a full executable, that's maybe a 20 or 30 meg file, it's able to take that, understand where the encryption is, and figure out figure out those encoded files and indicators, right? So that ability of an LLM to take that data and summarize and kind of extract that information is only going to get better. So that is something to keep in mind. So with that, what I want to do is just kind of, before I talk about trends, I want to talk a little bit about a specific case study that we came across and sort of talk about, while we happened to come across this case study last year, I'd like to sort of spend a moment in terms of and talk about how, given the state of LLMs now, we're able to kind of respond to that same case study now, right? Like 6 months after the incident happened, or maybe a year after that incident happened, right? Last year, we didn't have this ability to kind of leverage an LLM and kind of extract out. And you can sort of see how quickly the world has progressed in terms of us now using LLMs to fully automate detection response. and a year from now, it's going to get even better, right? So in this particular case, this was a ransomware operator out of Russia. Um, just to give you some background, the way ransomware operators work is they lease out services. So what will happen is a bad guy comes in, he gets that initial foothold, and then he'll lease out that service to other people to then leverage, right? So he's not the one having to negotiate ransom. He's basically leasing it out as a service. So for him, he's going to make money no matter what happens, right? And so that's what had happened. This was a prolific threat actor out of Russia, where they had already kind of been responsible for a number of ransomware incidents, and they targeted a hotel chain in the U.S. I'm just setting the stage here, just talking about this particular case study, right? In this particular case, the client had an existing EDR installed, but they also had our platform. Uh, the way the bad guys got in was there was a 0 day in FortiGate, which is a well-known firewall. They were able to exploit that 0 day, get some access onto the firewall, and then once they got that access, and once they got that initial foothold, they were able to scan the network, leverage some man-in-the-middle techniques to get some hashes. They used they were able to decode the hash, extract out the hash, leverage a password in order to connect to a machine. And this is sort of going back to what I talked about, attack lifecycle, right? It's not sufficient from a detection standpoint to only detect and respond to one action. You want the ability to respond at each stage of the attack lifecycle, right? So initial compromise, right? If when the bad guy connected to VPN, you want to know exactly who did it, when they did it, but you want that visibility across the board, right? And so while we were able to kind of remediate this particular threat, right, we saw them do their brute forcing. We saw them try to defeat their EDR, the existing EDR. We saw them leverage other third-party tools in order to kind of stay persistent across the network. We saw them actually steal data with them and help the client remediate. What you're able to do with LLM now is apply that everywhere. And I'll kind of talk about how it is that you're able to use ML and LLM across the board. From an initial compromise standpoint, what this gives you is, because you know which user is connecting at what time, you're able to use ML models in order to understand the anomalies, right? And this, for the most part, companies already had. Because you know exactly which user is logging in when, and how their behavior was over time, the most effective way of kind of detecting an anomaly would be an ML model, right? I think the challenge with LLMs right now is the context window is still small. So for you to be able to send it data across 30 days of data for a user activity and have it make sense of it is somewhat expensive, right? The other way you could detect, the other place to detect sort of or leverage AI and ML to detect is when attackers use tools, right? Like, for example, if they're using a tool like AD-Find to figure out who else is on the network, you're able to kind of leverage ML, an ML model or even an LLM to kind of summarize what that tool does for you and kind of make sense for you, right? So the bottom line is, right, it's not just summarization, it's not just AI assistant. Now, when you have this full visibility across the board, you're able to take in and summarize the alerts that are generated with the platform and kind of make sense of this full sequence of events, right? And so if this particular incident had happened now, our ability to at least summarize the information to the analysts that would have been responsible for alerting and kind of responding to this would have been far better, right? Because of how LLMs are proceeding. So with that, I'll just spend just a few minutes on sort of the future. I would say from my standpoint, obviously you're seeing sort of multimodal models already. I'd say the biggest trend that I'm looking forward to is smaller models and more efficient models, right? Right now, we're still kind of reliant on sending alerts and sending the information to a cloud sort of API in order to make sense of it. Now, we can deploy LLMs on our end, but you're still leveraging a performant machine in order to run that LLM. And then you're from your endpoints, you're sending queries to that LLM and asking questions of it. But the smaller the model, the better your ability to do it quickly without having to send the data out of your enterprise. As an example, right? Google introduced sort of an in-browser ability to detect malicious websites. So when you browse to a site, Gemini has a way where you can say, okay, you know what, is this site malicious based on sort of all of the LLM capabilities? But that capability is still reliant on Google asking a cloud service to make sense of that particular URL. The smaller the model, you're now able to take that information and leverage it on the machine itself as close to the user as possible. And so when you do that, it just makes it firstly faster and you don't have data leaving your machines, right? So that is one advantage of having a smaller model. We're able to take that and apply it on the machine itself. The other advantage of smaller, more efficient models is obviously cost, but you now have something running on the endpoints themselves, and so that means your users can also leverage the AI to make sense of it. Right. Uh, just another use case here, right? So oftentimes when you have a threat that you see on your browser, and you take that information, say a URL, and you ask a third-party service, is this URL bad? A lot of the times what the bad guys do is they will require that you to run a captcha, right, or answer a captcha in order to kind of understand what is behind it. So what you want to make sure you have is this model be as close to the user as possible, versus having to rely on third-party cloud services to make sense of it, right? And I'd say the other thing is just the use of agentic systems in order to kind of fully remediate and response is only going to get better, right? We're already able to use it, but I'd say that ability for platforms that have that full visibility, both from an endpoint standpoint as well as log management, to take that action is only going to get better. So I'm excited about sort of the future of AI. Firstly, excited to see how we are able to adopt it, but also excited to see where it takes us, right, as an industry. Now, I think the one thing is the bad guys are able to leverage this as well. So I would say, the sooner the industry kind of evolves to a point where you're comfortable with LLM and sort of you're able to incorporate that into your own detection models, I'd say the better.